The seatbelt sign chimes, the first-class cabin goes quiet, a passenger looks up from their seat on a flight to Hawaii, and time completely stops.
It just completely freezes.
Right, because just feet away stands the ghost of Y2K pop culture past. I mean, it's a 30,000-foot reunion, 20 years in the making.
And the fallout is just everywhere. Nick Lachey said one thing.
And Jessica Simpson just said another. So who's right?
It's the ultimate, confined space nightmare.
Welcome to StarScope Report. Join us as we uncover Hollywood drama, music industry shakeups, and, viral scandals. From red carpet surprises to social media controversies, we dive deep into the stories behind the fame.
And today's deep dive is, it's a massive one. We're unpacking a huge stack of sources today.
Yeah, we're pulling from TMZ, Just Jared, Perez Hilton, and we've got some really incredible insider intel from the Naughty But Nice audio show.
Our mission today is to look at how celebrities attempt to control their own stories and what happens when those narratives just completely spin out of their grasp.
Exactly. So we're dissecting that viral Nick and Jessica airplane saga, Blake Lively's absolutely brutal legal fallout, and Britney Spears' critical post-rehab crossroads.
I cannot wait to get into this first story.
I mean, I want to jump straight into it because it sounds like a literal fever dream. 2 decades after their highly publicized divorce, Nick Lachey and Jessica Simpson were trapped in the exact same airplane cabin.
For 6.5 hours.
Yes, 6.5 hours. But the real drama isn't just that they reunited. It's the incredibly specific, almost statistically impossible seating chart.
Right, and to really appreciate the gravity of that seating chart, you have to remember what this relationship meant to the culture back then.
Oh, totally.
This isn't just any divorced couple bumping into each other. From 2002 to 2006, they were the undisputed king and queen of early 2000s MTV reality TV.
Newlyweds, Nick and Jessica, I mean, they were the blueprint. Before the Kardashians, before the modern influencer era, this was the couple that gave us that infamous, is this chicken what I have, or is this fish moment with the tuna?
The chicken of the sea.
Exactly. They essentially defined an entire era of unlimited celebrity access. We watched them buy furniture. We watched them argue about trash.
And that level of access came with an immense psychological cost, right? In her 2020 memoir, Open Book, Jessica actually called Nick her first love.
Yeah.
But she also admitted that their marriage was, quote, crushed by the media and by ourselves. They were under a cultural microscope.
Neither of them was fully prepared to navigate that. So you take all of that intense history, all of that unresolved Y2K baggage, and you just lock it inside a metal tube flying across the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah, it's just wild.
So let's break down how this actually came to light, because the clash of narratives here is fascinating. Nick goes on Watch What Happens Live with Andy Cohen.
Right.
He gets asked about this flight, which had happened a month prior. And he plays it incredibly cool.
He really does.
He describes the encounter as, quote, strangely okay. He claims everyone was very cordial, very respectful.
Yeah, on the surface, it sounds perfectly mature, But if you look at the specific details he casually drops during that interview, he is painting a very deliberate picture.
Oh, for sure.
He sets the scene for Andy Cohen. He says, okay, Nick is sitting in first class with his current wife, Vanessa.
Which, I mean, is perfectly reasonable.
Right, perfectly normal. Then he notes that Jessica is also in first class, sitting right next to her mother, Tina.
Nick's former mother-in-law.
Exactly. So that's a little tense. You're sharing a luxury cabin with your ex-wife and the woman who used to be your mother-in-law.
But manageable, right.
You'd think. But then Nick drops the bomb. He reveals that Jessica's recently estranged ex-husband, Eric Johnson, who she just separated from in early 2025, is also on this flight.
Wait, on the exact same flight?
The exact same flight, with their 3 kids, and they're all sitting back in economy.
My jaw actually dropped when I read that detail in the Just Jared piece. I mean, you have your ex-husband, his new wife, your mother, your newly estranged second husband, and your 3 kids, all divided by the class curtain on a commercial flight.
It's an absolute masterpiece of awkwardness.
It really is.
Now, Nick presents this as a funny, bizarre coincidence, right? We were in the same vicinity, very respectful, but then the viral response kicks in, and Perez Hilton's sources painted a wildly different picture of the actual vibe in that cabin.
Yeah, the reality, according to those insiders, was just agonizing. The source claimed Nick turned bright red the second he saw her.
Oh, God.
There was no friendly catching up at all. They tried their hardest to ignore one another, to the point where the tension was described as painful.
Painful.
Yeah, and Jessica actually swapped seats with someone in her group just to put more physical distance between herself and Nick.
Which is a completely understandable human reaction to a high-stress environment.
Of course it is.
But here is where you have to look at the underlying mechanism of what Nick did on Bravo. In public relations, there's this concept called narrative anchoring.
Okay, explain that.
Whoever speaks first gets to set the baseline reality. By going on national television and casually telling this story as a lighthearted anecdote, Nick anchored the narrative.
Ah, I see.
He established himself as the laid-back, cordial ex-husband who's just over it all.
And by doing that, he forced Jessica into an incredibly difficult position. Because he didn't just tell a story about bumping into his ex-wife. He publicly outed the fact that Jessica was sitting in first class while her kids were back in economy.
Exactly.
After his interview went viral, the internet just absolutely exploded. People were judging her relentlessly. It forced Jessica into defense mode over her parenting. She had to publicly explain herself and her family's seating arrangements on a flight that, frankly, should have remained entirely private.
That is the power of narrative anchoring. Because if Jessica comes out first and says, actually, the flight was a nightmare, Nick turned red, and the tension was awful, she automatically looks defensive and hysterical compared to Nick's cool demeanor.
Wow, yeah.
He basically tossed a PR grenade disguised as a funny talk show anecdote. It forces you to realize that, 20 years later, the ghost of Newlyweds is still haunting them.
It's like an escape room, but the puzzle is just your own early 2000s emotional baggage, and there is no exit door.
That's exactly what it is.
Well, if you're loving these Hollywood twists, make sure you're subscribed. We've got even crazier stories ahead. Because, speaking of PR nightmares, while Nick and Jessica are battling it out over airplane seating, another beloved Hollywood blonde is fighting a much darker battle in the courtroom.
Oh, this next one is intense.
It really is, and it just cost her everything. Stay tuned. Because Blake Lively's highly publicized legal war against Justin Baldoni over It Ends With Us just ended in a devastating defeat.
Yeah, this story is a staggering look at what happens when a corporate power play exposes the internal machinery of a Hollywood production.
According to our sources, a judge just tossed Blake's most explosive claims, basically denying all her latest requests.
To understand why this is such a massive blow, we have to look at what was actually at stake here. The tension between Blake Lively and her co-star and director Justin Baldoni has been the worst-kept secret in the industry.
Oh, everybody knew. During the press tour, they were doing completely separate promotional circuits.
Standing on opposite ends of red carpets, yeah. But behind closed doors, it had escalated into a bitter legal dispute over creative control and, crucially, producer credits.
And for those who don't know, producer credits are not just vanity titles in Hollywood. A producer credit dictates financial back-end, meaning a percentage of the profits, and it dictates creative veto power.
It is the ultimate currency of control.
Exactly. So to prove that she deserved that level of control, Blake's legal team submitted what was supposed to be their smoking gun. According to the intel from the Naughty But Nice audio show, Blake submitted a massive 5-page, 77-point demand letter.
77 points.
Yeah, 77 points. She used this letter to document every single piece of creative input she had on the film, from script tweaks to lighting choices to wardrobe. She was trying to prove how much control she exerted over the project.
But this is where the strategy completely imploded. Baldoni's legal team took that 77-point letter and they just flipped it.
Right.
They weaponized her own meticulous documentation against her. They argued that this letter didn't prove she was a producer, it proved she was a micromanager.
Oh, that's brutal.
They used it to frame her as a bully on set, pointing to her uneven track record and her failed lifestyle ventures as proof that she was the difficult one, not Baldoni, and the judge agreed.
Blake walked away with absolutely nothing but a brutal lesson in how expensive and damaging public battles can be.
It's a disaster. Weaponizing a 77-point legal demand in a PR battle is like handing your opponent the architectural blueprints to your fortress. You think you're proving how much you built, but you're actually just showing them exactly where the structural flaws are.
I see your point about the legal strategy failing, and it clearly did, but I have to push back a little on the underlying narrative here.
Okay, let's hear.
Is Blake really a bully, or are we just watching the classic Hollywood playbook of villainizing a powerful woman who dares to ask for credit in writing?
That's a fair question.
Right. I mean, if a male actor, let's say Tom Cruise or Leonardo DiCaprio, submits a 77-point memo about creative direction, He is hailed as a visionary perfectionist.
Oh, 100%.
But a female actor does it, and suddenly opposing counsel is calling her an aggressive bully who oversteps her bounds, and the public completely buys it.
No, the double standard you're pointing out is absolutely real.
Mm.
The industry has a very long history of framing assertive women as difficult while rewarding the exact same behavior in men. But, and this is a big but, we have to separate fairness from litigation optics.
Okay, sure.
When you take a creative dispute into a courtroom, the jury and the judge are not debating Hollywood feminism, right?
Mm.
They are looking at the sheer volume of demands. Baldoni's team knew that labeling her a bully would stick because the public already had suspicions about the icy set dynamics.
Yeah, the TikTok rumors were already flying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, fair or not, submitting a 77-point manifesto was a tactical disaster because it handed the opposing side the exact ammunition they needed.
And now, Justin Baldoni is already exploring a sequel to the franchise without her. Ryan Reynolds has publicly stood by her, calling her fearless. And, insiders say Blake is plotting a high-profile Hollywood comeback, but the short-term damage is severe.
It just highlights how incredibly fragile a carefully crafted public persona really is. One miscalculated legal brief can unravel years of positive PR.
They really care. We've seen what happens when a Hollywood power play goes wrong. But later in this deep dive, we'll talk about what happens when the pressure of fame pushes a pop icon to the breaking point.
It's a sobering pivot.
The shocking twist nobody saw coming is next. Because while Blake Lively's situation is fundamentally a dispute over corporate power and profits, our next story is about sheer survival in the public eye.
Yeah, this one's tough to talk about.
We're talking about Britney Spears. The sources are indicating that she is facing a critical make-or-break moment right now. Experts are warning that this specific window of time could determine whether she rebuilds her life or risks falling apart completely.
The timeline of recent events, as detailed by Rob Shooter's Naughty But Nice podcast, is just escalating at an alarming rate.
It really is.
It started a few weeks ago with reports from witnesses who claimed Britney had a chaotic meltdown inside a Los Angeles restaurant. And the details were distressing, barking, screaming, waving a knife, and lighting a cigarette indoors.
And it didn't stop with a restaurant disturbance. Shortly after that incident, things took a severe legal turn. She was charged with misdemeanor DUI in California after erratic driving.
And a DUI charge shifts this from like a tabloid spectacle to a genuine structural crisis.
Right. She managed to dodge jail time, pleading guilty and receiving probation, a fine, and a mandated alcohol program.
Insiders are calling this arrest a wake-up call. It reportedly led Britney to check herself back into rehab.
But the personal fallout is continuing to ripple outward. Meanwhile, she has distanced herself from her family, recently raising a lot of eyebrows by completely skipping her niece Maddie's graduation.
Which is significant.
Yeah, for someone whose support system has always been a highly contested subject, isolating herself from family milestones is a massive red flag.
To really grasp the weight of this, we need to look at the mechanism of how she is being observed today. Think about the overarching theme of the sources we're looking at today, right?
Yeah.
Right, Britney Spears, Jessica Simpson, Nick Lachey. These are the foundational phases of the Y2K media machine. We are looking at the lingering, decades-long psychological effects of growing up inside that specific era of fame.
That era didn't just photograph these people, it consumed them for sport. And with Britney, you have to ask, at what point does the media's concern for Britney cross the line back into the exact same invasive surveillance she faced in 2007?
That is the defining tension of her entire public life. Every time an outlet reports on her erratic behavior, even if it's factual, like a DUI or a restaurant incident, it feeds the exact same machine that traumatized her in the first place.
It's just a cycle.
But the mechanism of surveillance has fundamentally changed. In 2007, the threat was 50 professional paparazzi in helicopters chasing her car.
Right.
In 2025, the threat is everyday citizens. It's a person sitting at the next table in the restaurant, secretly recording her on an iPhone before the check even arrives.
The surveillance is completely decentralized. It's everywhere.
Which creates a level of psychological paranoia that is almost impossible to comprehend. When anyone with a smartphone can broadcast your lowest moment to millions of people in real time, the pressure is inescapable.
Stay tuned and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next, because as you said, the technology is changing and these stories are only getting more complex.
Fame isn't just about red carpets. It's a high-stakes ecosystem of legal threats, carefully crafted public personas, and immense personal pressure.
And here is the reality check for all of us. When we consume these headlines, we are participating in that ecosystem.
We demand the access, but we are often deeply uncomfortable with the human cost required to produce it.
We started with a 20-year-old feud on an airplane and ended with the ongoing struggles of 2000s pop royalty. It makes you wonder, with AI, streaming, and social media, the entertainment world has completely changed. But have we actually evolved past the 2004 tabloid culture?
Or were we just consuming it on better screens?
It's something to think about. You've been listening to StarScope Report, where we uncover the stories shaping Hollywood, music, and pop culture. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that keep the stars shining.